To you both. Steve Rotheram, if I could start with you. You were thanked by the Prime Minister quite profusely today in the House of Commons. Are you returning the compliment?
I'm really surprised that Boris Johnson has the tenacity to thank somebody like me, given the former relationship that we've had where we've been at loggerheads. So I think that was a sort of a bouquet that he's thrown our way, because we are trying to get a deal off government, and we actually want to see the colour of the money and not just platitudes.
OK, so you're not entirely happy with what was announced today. And the thing you're not happy about, if I understand correctly, is that there's not enough money there for compensation.
Well, quite clearly, we've said, look, we understand that further restrictions were probably necessary, given the pressures on the NHS you just heard in the report and the exponential increases in transmission rates. But I have to be absolutely clear, it was the government that decided that we needed local restrictions in our area and to place the Liverpool City region into Tier 3. It wasn't local leaders, it was the government, and it's disingenuous for them to indicate otherwise. But we need that package of support. And until we get that package of support, and we've had lengthy talks over the last few days, then we can't support the package of restrictions going forward.
And just briefly, if you had said no to these restrictions, they would have gone ahead anyway, wouldn't they?
Yeah, there was no choice with the tier that we were going into and the restrictions, therefore, that we were placed under. And what we did, instead of expending energy on trying to get the government to change their mind when they have said that they wouldn't. And don't forget, we've known about this since last Wednesday, when it was leaked in the press and Liverpool City region was actually identified as being in Tier 3. So we've known about it. What we've tried to do is get the government to do the right thing and support local businesses.
So Andy Burnham in Manchester, you did say no on Saturday, didn't you? And now you're in Tier 2 and not Tier 3. Is there sort of haggling going on here?
Well, the data is very different in Greater Manchester. We're in a different position to Steve. We were higher than Liverpool back in the summer, but our figures have come down a little. So the average number of cases per 100,000 here is currently around 300. It's about 500 in the Liverpool City region, and hospitalisations are higher in Liverpool too. And this is, I think, whereas a bit of spin has crept into this today, the Prime Minister is trying to divide me and Steve. Nothing will ever divide me and Steve, by the way. He was put in no place to choose. He was told because of the figures, whereas we had an arguable case that we should be in Tier 2, and we did argue that case. But where Steve and I are absolutely at one is this. They are trying to put people into restrictions without adequate support. And it's no good the Prime Minister putting pressure on Greater Manchester to do that when he hasn't put a support package in place. Because the problem with that is they're looking at the virus in isolation. If they put people in a position where they haven't got enough money to pay the bills, where businesses are collapsing, where there's redundancies, we'll have a mental health crisis on top of the pandemic. So we're both absolutely clear. With restrictions must come support, and the government hasn't provided that yet.
OK, well, apparently the Prime Minister, who's doing this press conference as we speak, has just offered some support, or Rishi Sunak for that matter, but we don't know the details of it yet, so maybe you will get your way after all. But just to be clear, you have absolutely no veto over any of these measures being opposed. So do you feel at the mercy here of the government's political whim, or do you actually feel that they are following the science and the numbers?
Well, personally, I'm not sure that the measures in Tier 3 will work. I don't see the credible science behind those measures. You know, closing some pubs, but then letting others that serve food to open. I think it's a recipe for confusion. And I think this is the problem. They haven't shown that their Tier 3 measures will work, but they haven't put forward a support package to help people cope with those measures. It's going to choke off trade for pubs, for restaurants, for shops. This is going to level us down. And this is a government that's meant to be doing the opposite. If you put in place restrictions without support, you are going to level places down. And that is not acceptable to me. It's not acceptable to Steve. And this is where the government's got to change course.
Steve Rotheram, broadly speaking, the Prime Minister was very clear today. He said we cannot let the virus rip and we can't go into the kind of full national lockdown that we had back in March. So this kind of middle path, and it's a narrow one that he's steering at the moment, isn't that really the only option that he has, even if you might quibble with some of the details?
It's not quibbling with the details, it's asking for the scientific evidence that backs up the claims that the package that they would like to impose on the Liverpool City region, and of course in Manchester and other areas, is the right one to do the job of getting the exponential increase in transmission rates down, to take the pressure off our NHS. That's what we've asked for all along. And unless the government can provide that with us, how can people have confidence that the package will actually do the job? And the further one is for the government to provide us with an exit strategy. We're in tier 3. We've been told we're in tier 3. No ifs or buts, we're in tier 3 from Wednesday. How do we get from tier 3 to tier 2? Because we've got 4 weeks to try and influence what happens in that sphere. The government needs to provide us what measurements that we need to hit so that we can move between those different tiers.
Okay. Got to leave it there. Steve Rotheram and Andy Burnham, thank you very much to both of you. And as I said, the Prime Minister is still briefing the press, and we might hear some more about actually, the mechanism of review, which of course is still needs to be fleshed out. Well, it is, as you heard, hospitality venues which are immediately affected by all this. And we're joined now by Conor Foley, who is the owner of the Dock Leaf and the Dispensary, and Candice Fonseca, who owns the Dockside Restaurant and the food hall. What's it called?
Deli Fonseca.
Deli Fonseca. Thank you very much. I couldn't read that there earlier. Welcome to you both. So, first of all, Conor, for you, this is really bad news, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been bad news for a few weeks now. That's from when the confusion and fear really started, and no clear answers from the government around science or anything, even up until today and the announcement with no.
Okay, so you've got a pub and a bar.
Yeah.
You could start serving proper meals. I mean, are you expecting kind of restaurant critics dressed up as COVID marshals to come round and see whether a bag of crisps and a hunk of cheese is a proper meal?
One of them we do serve food. The other will have some hard decisions. But for the last 6 months, we've fought for our jobs of our sector, where Boris Johnson and Rishi haven't. And we'll keep doing that and adapting and changing and pushing.
And how many people do you employ?
Around 15.
15. And will you have to let anyone go?
I won't let anyone go until the last pennies in the bank account.
So you're holding on. Candice, what about you? You're actually not being shut down, are you?
No, but which most people would read that as being a positive, but actually it's the worst case scenario.
Why?
Because people have already voted with their feet. A vast parts of the population are being sensible in Liverpool, and they're adhering to the message of we need to beat this virus. Our restaurant has a lot of middle-aged to older clientele, and they've been, the last 2 weeks we've been really quiet. So what this means is if we still don't get the numbers in by the beginning of November, we're going to have no support whatsoever. Whereas at the minute, we're still utilising the furlough system.
Right. And just to be clear, you employ how many people?
About 42.
And again, are those jobs safe or not?
Not all of them. I mean, we're
Right.
lucky that we have the food hall as well, and December is a busy month for us in there, so we'll try and re-employ. But we've lost an outside catering business. We're getting no business there. Our restaurant went to 2/3 of its capacity. We're currently doing maybe a quarter of normal business, so clearly it just doesn't stack up. And my staff we've been going since March. We went all the way through lockdown, and it's I think this is the worst day since lockdown for us.
I mean, this is not the best night on which to savour what usually is quite an amazing nightlife here in the city of Liverpool. It's raining, it's a Monday night, but people are staying away, aren't they? Because they will stay away because they can't mix households. So what's the point of going out? Yeah,
I mean, the thing is, restaurants are all different. I mean, restaurants in the suburbs have been doing reasonably well because people are more comfortable going somewhere familiar where they can walk to. But the places in town, in the city centres, just like the City of London, we have visited for all different reasons, usually socialising, whether that's tourism or conferences, whatever, and all of that's gone. So how are we meant to hit any break-even point without any assistance in November?
So, Conor, when you were watching people coming into your establishments in the summer, the sun was out, people were kind of, even if they were practicing social distancing, it all seems to have gone away. Do you kind of look at yourself and think, we made some mistakes here, we had too much fun, we let our hair down too much?
No, I completely disagree. I think the hospitality industry over many other sectors has provided COVID-safe place to drink and socialise, and you can track where they are, whereas illegal household gatherings and student halls is probably the main focus that the government should be on, and not in damaging the economy.
And that's going to happen more and more now, isn't it? I mean, people can still go to the off licence and buy, quite a lot of booze, and they can go back home and then illegally try and mix with other households.
Yeah, you've got to earn respect, not demand respect, and I don't think many people respect Boris Johnson at the minute or will abide by those rules.
So in your sectors, you have your finger on the pulse of your local population. You hear what people say all the time, perhaps more than other professions. How much has the trust in the government been frayed by the kind of mixed messaging of recent months?
Hugely, and I think the youth are being used as a scapegoat, aren't they, for everything at the minute? I mean, I think people are just, even older customers, they're kind of getting to the point where they're like, I'm going to live my life anyway, because there just doesn't seem to be any consistency of message. And I think the thing is, we all just need to be responsible for our own safety. And we all risk assess ourselves every day in life, but we don't seem to be trusted to be able to do that now.
What about you, Conor?
Yeah, I've never seen so many figures given to me by guests, because they defend us. And you hear it a lot. It's 4% in our institution in the hospitality sector. That's the only evidence we've seen week in, week out by Public Health England.
But it will be over in 4 months' time, maybe 6 months. Who knows? It's not forever.
What if we're not here?
Well, we hope not.
Yeah.
Conor, Candice, thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme.